Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we're going to get some do's and don'ts on networking with an international expert. Her incredible journey just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
There's an old saying, you got to circulate to percolate. And I know so many people who, they do their networking on their computer. They like to brag they have 10,000 followers and connections on LinkedIn, but if you asked them, how many of them do you actually know? How many do you have a relationship with? They give you a look like, what are you talking about? Julie Brown is a networking coach and keynote speaker and my friend. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here to talk about my favorite thing, networking.
Well, and I worry about this next generation because they're kind of a texting generation, not a talking generation. Are you noticing, because you're in town to do a keynote, why don't we give a shout out to the organization that you're giving a speech to?
So tomorrow I'm speaking to the Construction Finance Management Association, a national conference of, financial CFOs for construction firms nationally, internationally, actually.
And so networking is super important for those guys.
That particular keynote is about internal networking structures. I've been doing a lot of research around the loneliness epidemic and employee success and retention and happiness. And there's a lot of things facing the construction industry right now, not the least of which is a declining workforce. We've had a declining birth rate since the 1970s, but if anybody knows anything about construction, I've been in construction for 25 years. Our industry has been dwindling at an even faster rate, which is compounded by the fact that in 2008, the subprime mortgage collapse, it started in the construction industry.
Wow.
And so we had droves of industry professionals leave and never come back. We have a huge missing middle for our industry. That is further compounded by the fact that millennials have the lowest birth rate of any generation. They're not having as many kids. Further compounded by the fact that in the construction industry, 41% of the construction industry will retire in 2031 because it's mainly Xers and boomers in the construction industry. So retaining talent and keeping that talent happy is really, really important. So I'm talking about internal networking structures to make sure that your employees are happy and healthy and living their best lives when they're in the office.
And what would be some do's and don'ts for internal networking?
So I think the biggest don't for internal networking is when companies leave it as up to the employees to make those internal networking structures, not giving them frameworks, not giving them structure to create cross-silo networks, to create cross-hierarchical networks, because the studies do show that the employees that are the most successful, engaged, and we retain them are those who build extremely broad, mutually beneficial, and uplifting relationships from the start of their employment.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be the job of the employee to create those networks. It should be a structured framework included in an onboarding system that creates those networks for them.
So that in many companies there are these silos, like I remember in the newsroom, the news people hung out with the news people and the engineers hung out with the engineers, but you can actually benefit from learning somebody else's position and the challenges that they face.
Problem solving comes from everywhere, and the more we break down those silos, we'll understand the possibility of internal networking structures to cover skill gaps and to have increased, more effective problem solving.
Sure. She's an amazing speaker. We found her most recent keynote sizzle reel. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Oh, geez.
The people you meet will change your life, and networking is how you meet those people. Studies show that one of the single biggest limiting factors for women in business is lack of a network. You've heard this before. I'm not telling you anything you haven't heard before, that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But there's nothing that says, hey, extroverts, why don't you shut up? Let somebody else talk for a minute. Jeez, boss bitch. Like Megan Thee Stallion is like singing hot shit behind you. Like, that's what I want. So you are the #1 thing that is gonna grow your career, grow your network, and grow the business that you work in. We start asking kids when they're little, what do you wanna be when you grow up? And then we're in college and you're at a frat party and the first thing somebody asks, what's your major? And then you get out, you graduate and then everybody asks you what you do for a living. I'm exhausted by that. Dopamine, neurotransmitter in the brain, sits in the pleasure center of our brain. It encourages us to repeat actions. So you have to learn how to remember names, and I'm gonna give you my tricks. But most people, in the process of building relationships, have a quitting point. They say, okay, you piece of shit tomato, where are you? You wanna know why? Because tomato gonna tomato, it takes 98 days. Because I would rather live a life in which I say, I cannot believe I did that shit, than I wish I did that shit.
No matter who you are, no matter how old you are, you have not yet met all of the people who will impact your life. I cannot wait to teach you how to meet those people.
And we should point out that you do that deliberately. You drop the S-bomb because it's for effect.
It's not for effect. It's because I grew up in construction industry in Boston. I think it's just how we communicate.
But it's real and it's refreshing.
It's
right?
not, I would say it's not for effect. When it comes out naturally.
So anyway, I wanted to explain to the viewers why they heard the S-bomb. Well, let's go ahead and pull up your website. And as we scroll down the website, let's talk about some of the groups that you love to speak to. What are some groups that need to learn external networking?
Great question. #1, everybody can benefit from external networking. There's nobody who won't benefit from learning how to network better or how to be strategic with networking. There's nothing else in our careers that we wouldn't have a plan for. So why don't we have networking plans and networking goals for ourselves every quarter, every year? But I think right now I have a keynote that is dedicated just for Gen Z. And it is for networking from campus to career. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier, like, do I worry about this generation? And I don't, because I think statistically we like to build stereotypes about generations, whether they are true or not. We love to do stereotypes for generations. And yes, there is a stereotype that Gen Z, they're addicted to technology. They can't handle face-to-face interactions. But when I think about, honestly, real life, when I think about Taylor Swift's Eras Tour and how all of those Generation Z kids moved those online communities into the real world and met up, even if they didn't have tickets to the concert, they met up in parking lots and got together and built friendships. They have the ability to move technology-fueled relationships into the real world.
Yes. And
so I don't worry about that. I also think they are such a socially conscious generation, which is what a lot of our organizations need. So I don't worry about that generation when it comes to networking. I think anybody with the tools can do it. It's not something that you can't do. Everybody who has these tools can do it. So I love giving that speech on college and university campuses. My other one I get hired for a lot, an external networking speech, is specifically for women. So one of the single biggest limiting factors for women in business is lack of a network, and it doesn't have to be that way. Networking creates competitive advantages, full stop, fact, not opinion. So I want to teach as many women as possible the power of networking and how to use it strategically, how to use it for increased influence and success, because that limiting factor doesn't have to exist for them.
Sure. And even introverts can be great networkers because it's about listening. It's not really about talking, isn't it?
I think hot take here. I think introverts are much better networkers than extroverts for a couple of different reasons. The first reason is they're usually more prepared to go into networking events. They understand who might be in the room. They've thought about that event more. They have maybe a list of questions that they want to ask. They know who they might want to meet. And then you got down to the brass tacks of it. Introverts are such better listeners than extroverts. And if you can get somebody talking and telling you their story, you have them. And introverts are so much better at that than extroverts.
Yeah, absolutely. And just asking the right questions. So give us what are some, if you're going into a room of strangers, what are some great opening questions?
Sure. So I call them dopamine-inducing questions. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain, sits in the pleasure center of our brain, and it inspires us to repeat actions. It's like our natural happy place. And it has been scientifically proven that you can cause a dopamine spike in the brain of the person you're talking to by asking the right questions. Questions that take them someplace else. What was the best trip you've ever been on? What is your favorite city in the world? Are you binging anything on Netflix right now? Do you listen to podcasts? What book are you reading? What was the best book you ever read? You know, what is the one, women love true crime. So what is the one true crime you want to know the answer to? Like, questions that make you understand who they are, like get them talking. One of my favorite questions is, tell me your favorite city in the whole world, because you can immediately see the person go back to that city in their brain. And when you do that, you are causing the dopamine spike. And I'm not saying that we should not talk about work. You should always have an elevator pitch, succinctly be able to say what you do for a living. Don't lead with it though. Like, lead with this process of like human-centric conversations, so that when you get to the point that you talk about what you do for a living, the person cares.
Yes. Let's talk about the follow-up, because some people will have like 4 or 5 meaningful conversations, but then they forget to follow up.
So another statistic, 80% of building and maintaining relationships is just following up. And people aren't good at it because they think it's the other person's job. So if you get really good at following up in a helpful, succinct way, and what do I mean by that is you've had these dopamine-inducing conversations. Maybe you asked, what's the next trip you're going on? When's your next vacation? And so the next time you follow up, after the 24-hour rule, you meet somebody, 24 hours, send them an email, say how wonderful it was to meet them, that you love the conversation that you talked about, try to make a next step, send them your calendar link and ask them if they can have coffee or lunch or whatever, a Zoom meeting. After that initial 24-hour follow-up, now you are armed with all of these things that you had, information about the conversation you had. So I would figure out what is important to them that I've gathered in that conversation and look for articles on it, or look for a book on it and send it to them. Hey, I remember in our conversation, you talked about you were going on this trip. Well, I just found the top 10 things to do in that city or whatever. Like, I have a friend who lives there. He gave me his list. I love that kind of follow-up. And again, it seems like we're talking about really personal things and like, are we going to get to business? People do business with and refer business to people they know, like, and trust. So these conversations, these human-centric conversations, are showing you, the other person, that you are on that journey to know, like, and trust. And it's so much easier to get business that way.
Sure. And I love that Julie gives away the gold. You don't have to hire her to actually get some free tips. If you follow her on all of her platforms, she's got these great tips. Here's one of them.
4 easy steps to take an objective look at your network. 1, create a spreadsheet with 4 columns. The first column is your top 5, your closest relationships. The next column is your circle of 15. The next column is your circle of 50. And then finally, in the 4th column, is your circle of 100 or more. Step 2, start putting names into each column. Go through your LinkedIn, your CRM, if you have one, your iPhone contacts, to jog your memory of all the people you know. Trust me, you know more people than you think. Include family and friends. They're a part of your network too, an important part of your network. Step 3, decide which columns need the most work when you look at them. If you feel like your sheet is a little more empty than you'd like it to be and you want to start meeting more people, don't worry, I can help you fill that sucker up. Follow along for ways to network, even if it scares the shit out of you.
So in the final 2 minutes, I want to talk about why every conference needs to add a component of networking into the conference. I mean, every conference that I've been to, you've got the sales and marketing speech, they've got the motivational speech, they've got the after dinner, lighter speech. Networking really is fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah. So there have been a lot of questionnaires of recent conference goers. What is the number one reason you're coming back to conferences, especially in a post-COVID world? And the number one reason is networking opportunities. And so if you know they're going to your conference to network, why not have somebody teach them how to network effectively while they are in that space? Not just network effectively, but figure out how fun it can be and be excited to network, because networking can be such an anxiety-inducing activity for a lot of people. So if you have somebody who can get on stage and say, this doesn't have to be hard, this can be really fun, and it will change your life, like that seems like the best way to start a conference.
Wow, I love it. Thank you, and good luck with your keynote.
Oh,
And
thanks.
we're going to end with her website, which is Julie Brown BD. That stands for businessdevelopment.com. The great Julie Brown. Thanks for coming on the
great.
show. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.